To make this setup work, you need lots of smoke in the room, or preferably haze. You need a dark background, and back there, I've got a data projector. That is projecting a pattern onto the back of Chloe and into the smoke. Now, to separate Chloe from the background, I'm using a light here with a small grid, and when it all works together, there's very little to do in post-processing because it looks like this. But of course, it didn't start here, so let's rewind and break this down. To help me out today, I've got the amazing Chloe. Chloe's going to be the model for this photo session, and when it comes to lights, you need to think about your weakest light and work from there. Now, I'm going to be using continuous light throughout this, and by far my weakest light is over here, which is the projector. Now, this is quite an old data projector, but it'll do the job just fine. And if you don't have one of these, stick around to the end and I'll show you a few alternatives. Now, to make this work, I need an image to project, so I've got one here. It's colourful, it's bright, and you can download it for free from my website. You'll find a link in the video description, along with the gear I'm using here. So let's turn the projector on, because the way this works is going to matter quite a bit. First thing I need to do is to set this projector pretty much as bright as it will go, and as wide as it will go as well. That's going to come in handy when we get to the next bit, when we add smoke. But before we do, we can just test a few things. The first thing is it wide enough? So I need the light to pass underneath Chloe a little bit down here, but more importantly, above her head. So I've just got a white piece of paper, and I can just hold this up here, and I can see that the light is definitely higher than Chloe. If I just do nothing, if I just take a picture at whatever the camera says is the right settings, which is perfectly okay, but not really what I'm after. What I actually need to do is to take control of the room lights, and I'm going to take control by turning them off like this. Yeah, that kind of works. I haven't turned all of the lights off, which is what I would like to do, because, well, you need to still see me in the video, and Chloe, more importantly. So now we need to be able to see those rays of light, and the only way we're going to do that is by filling the room with lots of smoke. Here we go. So just like that, we can now see the colourful background. It's the smoke that makes it happen. No smoke, no colour. The amount of smoke we add into the room is going to affect not only the brightness, but the tone that we see as well. So it will change, and I may have to live with it a little bit as we go along and ride the settings. But there's a reason I'm using the Smoke Ninja as my smoke machine of choice today. It's because the smoke from this has a really long hang time. So a few things you need to know about smoke to make this work. And the first one is that black background I mentioned at the beginning, because if I add smoke into the scene, you really only see it when it's against a dark background. So that is super important. You won't see it so much up here, although there's just as much haze and smoke in the room as there is back there. It's an odd thing, but that's how smoke works. Next is the smoke itself. Now, by default, it has texture, and I can see it swirling around. It looks nice, but it's not the look I'm going for today. Today, I'd like something a little bit smoother. So how do I turn smoke into haze? Well, get yourself a 5-in-1 reflector. This is the converter from smoke, which has texture, to haze, which doesn't. Just by wafting it around the room a little bit, it'll break up the smoke, and with a little bit of effort and time, you'll end up with haze. But what you do find is you need an awful lot of smoke to get a little bit of haze. So let's keep adding some smoke in. If I take a picture like this with the room lights on so you can see the video, here we go. You can see how the colour is building up really nicely in the background, and we've got light on Chloe's face, but it's not the light I actually want. Watch the difference if I turn the room lights off, which are just behind you. Now we have a more silhouette picture, and shadows are good because shadows are where you can add in your own light. But first, I think we should take a few pictures with some silhouettes. I said it was a silhouette, but actually it's not quite, because you can still see detail in Chloe's face. And that's simply because I'm working in a small home studio. So light is bouncing off the walls, off the ceiling, and some of it is eventually making its way back onto Chloe's face. Now, I could fix that with maybe V-flats or blackout curtains on the walls, but actually, I actually quite like it. It does have a long hang time, but eventually it does dissipate. So I do need to keep topping the smoke up fairly regularly and keep wafting it as well. So there's a few things to note about this setup. The first one is, I don't know if you noticed, but the background did change. Now, how can it change when it's a static background? Well, it's because the image I'm using is high res, and I'm using Photoshop to project it, and I can zoom in. So that's a great tip to change the background, move it around, zoom in, zoom out, change the colors to change the results. I think that looks a little bit more smooth. And then, well, the silhouette was okay, but what if you don't want a silhouette? Well, that's where you can add in your own light. So the reason I wanted it dark was so I can actually light Chloe with something like this. So this is the Godox Lightmons LA150R. It's a 150 watt LED, and I've got it set to 1%. It's on its lowest possible power. And I said at the beginning, you've got to work with your weakest light, which clearly is the projector, because 1% is seriously bright. Now, I need to turn the room lights off, but even if I turn the room lights off, this is the results I'm getting, which is way too bright on Chloe. Now, I can't turn this light down any lower, I can't make the projector any brighter, and if I alter my camera settings, it's going to throw everything out. So I'm going to use this. This is a grid, and it's a tight grid, 10-degree grid. It's going to do a couple of very useful things. The first one is it's going to give me a bit more direction to the light, which is what I want anyway, but mostly it's going to cut down the light by at least a stop, which is exactly what I want. All I need to do is to make sure it's pointing actually at Chloe. Being such a tight grid, it's easy for her to step out of the lights. But I think something like that, which if Chloe looks into profile, ends up looking like this. And that is basically the setup done. So now all I need to do is, well, add a bit more smoke, because you can never have too much smoke, and give this a waft around, and then we'll get taking some photos. Okay, here we go. The Godox LED is positioned to the side because if it was positioned in front, it would actually bleach out some of the colour from the projector. However, moving it around to the side does limit the poses that Chloe can do and the look I can actually get. And although I said turn the room lights off, you know what? If they're controllable and not too bright, I might actually just try leaving them on as a bit of fill for a few shots. The reason I'm using a data projector for this is its flexibility, because if you can display something on a screen, you can use it as a background, but there are alternative ways of getting similar results. And one of them would be to use something like this. This is the Flashpoint AK-R21. It's a projector unit that attaches to a speed light. It takes 35mm slides, and it's a pretty good budget option. Or you can get more traditional projectors for your lights, like this one from Nanlite, which is designed for LEDs. Make sure you get one for LED if you're trying to use it on an LED light, but you can get flash versions as well. And whatever you do, the secret to making this work is, well, just having some fun. Now, if you've enjoyed this video or you've got any questions about what you've seen, then why not leave me a comment down below? Click on the thumbs up whilst you're down there. And of course, if you haven't already done so, you should definitely click on that subscribe button. And if you want to see alternative ways of using these kind of projectors, then why not check out this video up here where I do exactly that. I'm Gavin Hoey. Thanks for watching.